Hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it's time to give my final thoughts, my review of Black Myth Wukong. I have beaten the game, I've gotten the true ending, I believe. I found all the secret areas, I beat the hidden boss of Erlong, and yeah, I understand why this game is going to do very well come awards season for 2024, because this game is in contention for my game of the year as well. I enjoyed this game extensively and more than I thought I would. I went into this game expecting to like it because I am a fan of Souls. I am a fan of combat systems like this. What my one main concern going in was I thought the meat and potatoes of the combat, the stick gameplay, was going to be a bit unsatisfying because just watching the trailers and the pre-release content for this game, it didn't look mechanically satisfying to me. That all changed the moment the controller got into my hands. It felt fluid, it felt fun, it was interesting, it felt visceral. I love the spells this game gives you, I love the customization this game gives you, the progression this game gives you, and I love the ups and downs throughout this game. There are some weird difficulty spikes, at least for me, but none that completely ruined the experience. The vast majority of the time, I found this game to be extremely fair and fun, and also well designed, with memorable boss fights, interesting mechanics, and interesting ways to just simply interface with the game. Black Myth Wukong is a game based on Journey to the West, and the funny thing about this game is that it's a journey in of itself, and I'm not talking about the plot. The game is broken up into various chapters. In these chapters, they have their own levels, their own map design and all that, and the story's progressing throughout. I cannot talk about why this game is so good without getting into some spoilers, so fair warning for the rest of this video. Every time you think you know what this game is, it surprises you in all the right ways. With Chapter 1, you think this game is going to be relatively linear, mostly a boss rush, the occasional secret every now and then. You expect it to be kind of light on the actual narrative, largely focused more on the gameplay. It's going to be beautiful. That's kind of the vibe you get. Then you get to Chapter 2, and everything opens up. There's far more side content to do, there's far more to explore, your abilities and the spells you acquire begin to really take shape here as well, and the story takes a bit more of the spotlight. It's not entirely there yet, but there's a bit more here that's interesting. The soundtrack really starts to come into its own here, with the headless guitar guy, but the chapters largely feel distinct to one another. There's a bit of a disconnect between Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. Then we get to Chapter 3, and that breadth of side content remains. However, what they now do is they start to sprinkle in more important main characters. You have the little fat kid, you have my favorite character of the game, Jmulls, who's this little pig bro who uses a rake in combat. He's funny, but he's a big personality in a game that desperately needed one. And he becomes this companion to the Destined One, who is the main character, the monkey you're playing as. And throughout Chapter 3, you get what you didn't get in Chapters 1 and 2, and that's character dynamics and interactions. Stories are unraveling here. The mythos is really being leaned into here. You have riding around on giant turtles. You find the corpse of a giant snake. And this is when the beauty of the game really takes into its own, in my opinion. When you have the realization that every chapter is going to bring something new to the table. Because then you go to Chapter 4, and you're like, okay, wait a minute, we're now deviating from the storytelling structure that has been set up throughout the entirety of the game up to this point. Each chapter felt separate, with its own cast of characters, and there was no real throughput character interaction chapter to chapter. That is no longer the case with Chapter 4, when Jmulls stays with the Destined One. He is your companion throughout the rest of the game. And then Chapter 4, you get his storyline. And the game leans even more so into characterization than ever before with the Spider Ladies. There's a lot more dialogue, there's a lot more character development that happens in this chapter. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is actually weirdly engaging. I was expecting a storytelling structure more similar to Souls-like, but that's the beauty of this game. It hits you with the bait and switch. In Chapters 1 and 2, it makes you think the storytelling will largely be relegated to the codex of enemies, or item descriptions, or the occasional poem you'll hear. Stuff like that. More loosey-goosey. Now now it's far more rigid, it's far more coherent as well. It's interesting, it develops, it fleshes out, and the scenes that happen in this game are really cool. Remember that scene in Chapter 4? Near the end, there's this scene where you get swarmed by spiders, and it's brilliant to look at, because it gets really creepy, and there's more than you think, and you have to evacuate from, like, the spider cavern, because the entire chapter largely takes place underground, and it's so cool. And we'll get into this in a bit, just how visually beautiful this game is. This goes to show how great of an engine Unreal Engine 5 can be when it's utilized properly. Then Chapter 5, in my opinion, is one of the most brilliant chapters in this game, because it does largely what Chapter 4 did. It has a cool environment being on the volcano, but it's like, okay, this structure you are now familiar with from Chapter 4, we're going to largely retain that. We'll have some interesting enemy design with the chariots. There's like an Indiana Jones wheel thing you have to evade from. Really cool visuals with the Iron Bull. But we're now going to lull you into this false sense of security that this is the final form of this game. Yeah? We went Super Saiyan 4 here. This is the finale. This is like the creme de la creme. This is what this game is. Chapter 6 comes in like a wrecking ball. The final chapter of the game all of a sudden becomes this open world adventure where you get the flying Nimbus, and you can now fly around in this giant open world, and you're like, how does this game keep doing this? Time and time and time again, how does this game just keep being more than what you thought it could be? Every time you think you have figured this game out, it throws a curveball, and the curveball lands center of the plate. It's great. Everything works. My only little complaint with this game is that, actually I have a couple. For me, when I was exploring the open world location of Chapter 6, it largely felt empty to me. I'm not saying that it is, because there are things there. There are optional fights you can partake in, but the vast majority of it to me, when I'm just simply flying around it, trying to find stuff, felt empty to me. But, as is kind of the case with this game, every time I thought I had fully explored a location, I then got recommended a TikTok that showed me, hey, don't forget this part back in Chapter 2 or in Chapter 3. I'm like, how much is there to this game? Because every time I thought I had fully explored a location, I realized that, good God, am I reliant on a mini-map that's not even there, because there was just an entire other path that I hadn't gone down, filled with a whole bunch of optional side content. I guarantee you that there is so much that I missed throughout this game. You could entirely miss out on upgrading your weapons and your gear, because that comes from side content with the Painted Realm. And I think the only real hang-up that I have with this game, because I can get over the difficulty spikes and all that, maybe I'm just really bad at navigation and it's just a complete skill issue in my plot, possibly. I think some of the side content is a bit too obfuscated and can be kind of hard to naturally discover on your own. I'm sure some people will naturally find this kind of stuff, but I find it hard to believe that you'll find everything on your own without any external help, or at least the average player would. For the occasional side boss, it's like, who cares? But for things like the Painted Realm, maybe a stronger nudge would have been appreciated for my part. There is an argument to be made, and I think this is an interesting discussion to have, is that we now live in an age of communication where we have the sum total of the collective human experience for any singular thing at our beck and call whenever we need. There is something to be said for how cool it is, though, to have like word of mouth happen online, where I can get recommended videos, I can see videos in passing where it's like, here's this secret in Black Myth Wukong. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Let me go back because I want to do this, or I want to get this item, I want to get this spell, I want to get this transformation, I want to get this weapon, I want to do this side boss. Because that is a cool feeling, and I do think that added to my experience with Black Myth Wukong. Because it felt like a bit of a community was forming around this game and discovering all that it had. So I think I can understand why people would say it's really hard to find things in this game sometimes, or you can just naturally miss a ton, and people can view that to be a problem or a critique. And I'm like, yeah, I think I would agree there, but there's also a charm where you have a bunch of people online finding something cool and then going to talk about it with everyone else, and then those people going out to find that one thing. I got that experience back in Elden Ring. I got it here as well with Black Myth Wukong, and I think that is an interesting phenomenon unique to modern gaming, with modern social media and all that. Because there's entire secret areas and zones. Like, good God, some of these are pretty tame. Like, the secret area in Chapter 1 is like whoop-de-doo, right? It's like one secret boss, cool. And then others are like entire zones that you would expect to be their own chapters. And they're beautiful, man. They really are. The presentation in this game is simply stupendous. The game's a spectacle to look at wherever you are in this game. Every chapter is unique and beautiful in its own way. Sometimes haunting, sometimes just mysterious, or just beautiful. Especially the ending. Good God, the final boat ride? Mwah! This game nails the idea of the journey and encapsulates that extremely well. Because at the end of it all, I'm like, damn, that was a great journey I went on with this game. There are ups and downs, twists and turns. It had momentum. I'm remembering Chapter 2. I'm remembering all the characters I met along the way. BoJack Horseman, who was a recurring character. Baija, the Spider Ladies. The little guy that taught me Immobilize back in Chapter 1. There's so much cool stuff throughout this game, and what a goddamn amazing intro this game has. I've probably been playing it throughout the beginning of this video, or throughout parts of this video, but good God, is it so cool. This game nails the spectacle, and there was one spoiler besides who the final boss was that I saw a comment where someone said this game had a better Titan fight than Final Fantasy 16, and I didn't know what they were yapping about. Then I got to it. You go through the war that is Erlong. Easily, bar none, the hardest fight in this game in my opinion. And the lowest I ever thought about this game was during that fight, but when I beat him, when I finally managed to overcome that wall, they give you the best payoff possible. It's fun, it's bombastic, it's larger than life, and yes, I kind of agree. I think Black Myth Wukong did do a better Titan fight, which is insane for me to think about. But it was just so fun. It was so good. It was so good. And the game was also weirdly emotional, like more than you think it would be after the first 3 chapters. I am fully excited to see what Game Science has cooking for the future. Because what an amazing, I think this is their breakout performance, but what an amazing one at that. Black Myth Wukong is incredible. The spells work, they make you feel like Sun Wukong. The game largely, for the vast majority of it, feels fair, but it feels fun and interesting and dynamic. The progression, the customization, the various armors, the tier set bonuses, the different weapons. Every time you think you have this game figured out or that you understand what it is, it throws a curveball at you, and is better because of it. It's going to be hard for me to pick what my game of the year this year is, because it's been such a stacked year with so many great games. But I think when all is said and done, it's going to be a 3-way race for me. That'll be between Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Black Myth Wukong, and if Metaphor ReFantazio keeps up at its current pace, I haven't gotten through the game yet. I'm still very early on in it, but I'm loving that game as well. I think it'll be between these 3 games for me. And if Black Myth Wukong ends up cleaning up awards, I think it will be rightly earned. This game is amazing. It takes popular mechanics and popular ideas from Souls, but adds its own unique twist on all of them, and is all the better for it, and has plenty of unique elements to itself. I never read Journey to the West. I don't know the story all that much. And I can only imagine how much better everything is if you had. Because the cutscenes and the way they choose to portray them with that art style of like ancient Chinese art is absolutely beautiful, and it's unique, and it makes all of these like post-chapter cutscenes stories in of themselves. They're great. It's like I get to watch a little movie that doesn't drag on for too long. And yeah, there are certain bosses, namely the chapter bosses, like the final bosses for each chapter, where there's an item you can collect through side content previously in the chapter that you can utilize to overcome a mechanic that fight presents, where may otherwise be overwhelming. The famous example for this is the needle with Chapter 4. Yes, finding these on your own can be a bit of a pain in the balls. But I will admit, I think it's cool that you can find an item that counts as a boss directly. But you can also use that item in other ways throughout. I used the fan all the time after I got it. It was so good. It's a mechanic and an idea that has pros and cons, but at the end of the day, I think it ended up being more of a pro for me than a con. And that's my way of thinking with most of the ideas in this game. Like, sure, there are some things that can be annoying or just tedious, but at the end of it all, I think there's more positives about them than there are cons. The combat works super well. My one main issue is that it takes a freaking age to actually use your healing item after you hit the damn button. That's annoying to me. I wish they would address that. But it does play into the pacing of it all. So, like, maybe at the end of it all, there's more pros at the end of it. Like, maybe that's the case, and it wasn't like there's overwhelmingly bad things. I did eventually get used to it. Good God, does this game have a great pace to it. I love the combat. The animations were rock solid. The pacing felt good. The mechanical feedback you got for hitting the enemy felt good. I love the skill point system, the skill point accumulation, the various weapons, how they could interplay and change your build, how easy it was to change your build. It felt really good. Black Myth Wukong was a phenomenal RPG, and I cannot wait to see what Game Science has cooking for the future. It is easy to get upset and down about modern gaming, but games like Black Myth Wukong, they fill me with optimism for the future. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day. I'm Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming. Until we meet again.